time, one last time, and I never let go. I just hold you forever. Maybe I could cope if I could hold you. Kiss and love, kiss and love, kiss and love.
Got a girl back home in Michigan, and it tastes like Jack when we're kissing. So I told her that I never really liked her friends. Now she's gone and she's calling me a bitch again. There's a girl that lives in the Garden State, and she told me that we make it till we graduate. So I told her that the music would be worth the wait, but she left me in the kitchen with the dinner plate. I believe, I believe, I believe, I believe we were meant to be. Jealousy, 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 jealousy get the best of me. Look, I don't mean to frustrate, but I always make the same mistakes. Yeah, I always make the same mistakes, 'cause I'm bad at love. Ooh, you can't blame me for trying. You know I'd be lying saying you were the one. Ooh, that could finally fix me. Looking at my history, I got a girl with California eyes, and I thought that she could really be the one this time. But I never got the chance to make her mine, because she fell in love with little thin white lines. A London girl with an attitude. We never told no one, but we look so cute. Both got way better things to do, but I always think about it when I'm riding through. I believe, I believe, I believe, I believe that I'm in too deep. Jealousy, 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 jealousy get the best of me. Look, I don't mean to frustrate, but I always make the same mistakes. Yeah, I always make the same mistakes, 'cause I'm bad at love. Ooh, you can't blame me for trying. You know I'd be lying saying you were the one. Ooh, that could finally fix me. Looking at my history, I'm bad at love. Oh, you know, you know, you know, you know, I'm bad at love. I'm bad at love.
Spent 24 hours, I need more hours with you. You spent the weekend getting even new. We spent the late nights making things right between us. But now it's all good, babe. Roll that backwood, babe, and play me close. 'Cause girls like you run round with guys like me to sundown. When I come through, I need a girl like you, yeah, yeah. Girls like you love fun, and yeah, me too. What I want when I come through, I need a girl like you, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I need a girl like you, yeah, I spent the last night on the last flight to you. We took a whole day up, trying to get way up, ooh. We spent the daylight trying to make things right between us. Oh, oh. But now it's all good, babe. Roll that backwood, babe, and play me close. 'Cause girls like you run round with guys like me to sundown. When I come through, I need a girl like you, yeah, yeah. Girls like you love fun, and yeah, me too. What I want when I come through, I need a girl like you, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I need a girl like you, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I need a girl like you, yeah, yeah. Maybe it's 6:45. Maybe I'm barely alive. Maybe you're taking my shit for the last time, yeah. Maybe I know that I'm drunk. Maybe I know you're the one. Maybe I'm thinking this better as you drive. 'Cause girls like you run round with guys like me to sundown. When I come through, I need a girl like you, yeah, yeah. Alright, I'm ready now, ready now. Ain't gonna fall back down now. Alright, I'll take it on me. Take it on me, baby. All I ever ask, are you gonna be my lover tonight? And take it with me. Take it with me. What if I left and it made no sense, and you tell your friends and they hold your hands? Baby, never mind, never mind. Never mind, never mind. What if I left and it made no sense, and you tell your friends and they hold your hands? Baby, never mind, never mind.
Hi everyone, we're starting in approximately 2 minutes, so do grab your food and grab a seat so we can start the event.
Thank you. No sense, and you tell your friends and they hold your hands. Baby, never mind, never mind. Oh, never mind, never mind, never mind. Oh, never mind. What if I left and it made no sense, and you tell your friends and they hold your hands? Baby, never mind, never mind, never mind. Oh, baby, never mind. Alright, I'm ready now, ready now. I ain't gonna stop right now, no. Alright, I'll take it on me. Take it on me, ooh, baby. All I ever ask, do you wanna see my fire tonight? And take it with me. Take it with me, ooh, baby. What if I left and it made no sense, and you tell your friends and they hold your hands? Baby, never mind, never mind. Never mind, never mind. What if I left and it made no no sense, and you tell your friends and they hold.
Okay, thank you everybody for coming in tonight. Thanks for being a part of what we're trying to do here at SGInnovate. So I'm sure everybody's, I hope, been here at least once, but in a nutshell, we're here to try and encourage and enable ambitious men and women that want to try and take their scientific research, scientific foundation, and go build a product that ultimately forms the foundation of a company. So we're interested in trying to help people build deep tech companies. And as part of that, we're always interested in bringing people together that have something to say about an important topic. And then after we have a bit of a chat, we'll hang around for a while and cover whatever you'd like to cover. So in the way that I always like to try and do, I'm never as good at introducing somebody as they are introducing themselves. So what I'm going to do is jump straight in and ask Ieva to introduce herself. And off we go. We'll have some questions. I've got a few. And then I'm going to go straight to you. So these things work best if you say, here's something that's on my mind. There's nothing more difficult than sitting up here and saying, anybody have a question? And there's like a whole room full of crickets chirping quietly and nothing. So please be thinking about what you'd like to ask Ieva, because we have an amazing opportunity tonight to speak with somebody that's not only doing important work in Norway, but also important work at the European Union level. So with that in mind, Ieva, please.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you very much for having me. Right, so Steve told me to say something about myself. Let's try. Okay, so you see my name on the screen, and I work in one of the most amazing companies in the world, I would say. And the reason why, because this is the company that enables people to grow. And this company is called Telenor. Telenor is a company that operates in Scandinavia and Asia. We actually have most of our operations, most of our business in Asian markets. Bangladesh, Myanmar, Malaysia, Pakistan, and also we also have a unit in Singapore. I was just learned that we actually have been in Singapore for 20 years. So that's a company that provides Shirley's traditional telecommunication in products. But in addition to that, we also look into new markets. And my role in that company is twofold. First, I work in R&D unit in Oslo, where we actually develop AI ecosystem in Norway. Sounds big, but in fact, what we were doing 2 years ago, we were building the artificial intelligence laboratory in the national powerhouse of AI, as we call. And Telenor, including myself, were among the founding fathers, as we call, in Norway to build AI, both research and also startup ecosystem. So that was one of the roles, and I'm still holding that role of driving that ecosystem in Norway. The second role that I play quite recently is I was appointed to the high-level expert group of AI in Brussels and the European Commission invitation, with actually a very, I would say, humble, a little bit job we have to do. First is we were asked to develop investment and policy recommendations for how EU should actually step in the race of AI. And second, we're also developing recommendations on ethical framework of AI. So I'm sitting on that group together with other 51 experts advising EU. And the reason why Telenor is there is several. First, Telenor is actually very known for responsible business approach. It's not that we talk about it, we actually do it. And the reason why we're there, because we want to be at the forefront of debate. And the second thing, we actually use AI in our daily operations. So it's very important for us as a big player, but also a humble player in AI, I would say, to be in those markets, both in Europe and in Asia. And today, I'm very glad to be together with startup communities, truly believe in them. I'm a very big supporter, because you are guys that I would say rock all the time, because you are the testing guys. You will test what's actually built in research labs. And without you, I would say, I mean, it would be very difficult to bring the ecosystem. So very thankful for being here. Looking forward, Steve, for hopefully not too many difficult questions, but interesting questions for the audience. Yeah, good?
Thank you for that. Thank you very much, Ieva. So what I'd like to do is just as a little memory my team, a couple of members of my team and I were at an event, a deep tech event in Trondheim in February of this year, and we have a very happy memory. Here we are. No prizes, that's me and a couple of my teammates, and when somebody at the event said, hey, would you like to go jump in the fjord? We thought that sounded like a lot of fun, and then we realized actually that it's pretty brisk in February, but thankfully the survival suit. So that's my experience of Trondheim, and I'm sure there's a lot more than that going on, but what I'd love to do is start off with you were presenting at an event in Oslo about a year ago. I'm sure you presented at lots and lots of events, but a couple of things stood out for me, and I wanted just to bring you back and ask you to think about them with us. When you were talking about hubs and AI and how hubs are built, you said the main findings, it's about knowledge workers and breakthrough innovation and R&D. Entrepreneurs follow the talent, not the money. So to build an AI supercluster, business leaders must be convinced of the importance of the explorative research. Can you talk a little bit about how that's working for you now? That's a year ago. How's that working? What's the role of the corporate or corporates? And how do they relate to the hub that you would like to build in Norway and elsewhere?
Thanks a lot, Steve. Well, that was a year ago, right? And I have to say that, well, the AI world moves very fast. Having said that, the role of the corporate in building ecosystems is immensely important. Why? Because several reasons. One is, you know, the corporates have a potential to scale. They prove that. So a potential to scale also brings startup companies, researchers, and hopefully also investors to be interested in what we are doing, or generally corporates are doing. Secondly, corporates have usually a responsibility, bring back something back to the society, and that's what Telenor has done in Norway, and elsewhere as well, and in Asia as well. What I mean by that, the reason why we set up the lab, and we call it National Lab in Norway, is because first, we're all bleeding from talents. We don't have them. And I've been in IMDA just an hour ago. They were saying the same. That's the same challenge for Singapore. We went in Bangkok a couple of days ago. That's the same challenge in Bangkok. That's the same challenge in Brussels. That is the same challenge in Beijing and elsewhere. We have to find very smart ways to acquire talents, train them, and retain. And for that reason, what we felt we should do in being in Telenor. By the way, Telenor is a very known company in Norway. It's like, you know, it's like in your hearts, in your heads, and everywhere. I mean, if you go there, I mean, every second person either knows someone from Telenor or actually works in Telenor. It's a national anthem. It's almost like a, you know, a symbol, you know, from 1980, was it like 80 and 54, isn't it? 150 years old. So having said that, we said, okay, what we could do, let's bring the money to the university like a gift and say, guys, we need to step up. We need to create a national strategy for AI. We need to compete globally, not as Telenor, but together. But actually, the Norwegians have the word dugnad. You know, dugnad means, it was a new word for me too, I'm not Norwegian. And dugnad, in fact, it's actually joint work. We have a duty, joint, together. So that was actually the goal for Telenor, setting up a stage in the country, inviting others to join, and being a locomotive of this drive for AI. And I have to say, after 1 year, I think we succeeded. Why? Today, we just a month ago announced an open or Norwegian open AI lab, an extension of our lab with 5 top industry players that top the charts in Norway. The biggest energy company, the biggest bank, the biggest shipping and maritime company, Telenor included, and the top research institute with the top university. Why we did it? I'm saying this is a success, answering your question. Whether corporate's important, they drive ecosystems, but they would never be alone. I think it would be a mistake to think that we could do it alone. And in that sense, I think the dugnad is a good word. It fits very well this ecosystem building efforts. And yeah, I'm glad to see that at least what we managed to create, and I think it's a success, it's a national awareness and a joint interest. So the next stage is the national strategy for AI in Norway.
So let me build on that same set of comments that you made here, because I think they really tie together. You talked about Nordics, in this particular case, having some unique capabilities that were competitive globally, one of which was rich registry data on health, maritime, oil, and so on, which you classified as being a virtual gold mine. How does Norway, I'll say in this particular case, think of data and balance this inevitable tension between privacy and the importance of protecting data, but recognizing that more data is also critical to advancing artificially intelligent systems?
That's a good question, and that's always a question in these debates. Well, first thing, privacy and protection of private data is very important for Norway. It's at the core of a value system. Norway also is part of, the European value system, and sort of they take part in the European debates and what Europe actually adopted in terms of the GDPR and the regulatory kind of framework there. Norway have set up the same, so we have the same standards. We believe that it's possible to combine. It will be challenging. In some areas and some industries, it might be challenging. But actually, that is a strong belief in the Norwegian government, I'm talking about Norway, but also in Telenor, that responsible AI with high awareness and trust building in the society. I think we should never forget that putting privacy regulation on top of data is one, but there is always a reason why you do it. And the reason is that we believe this is a better off for the society. But if better off for society means that they are not necessarily understanding the level of detail, we need to start building trust and awareness. And I know that Singapore is also doing big steps towards creating, trust. You need to create trust and understanding what AI can do and what it can't. And whether privacy comes into that equation, we believe so. If the society believes no, I think we could have a discussion in the second round.
All right, so let's pick up on this concept of ethics and trust and protecting of data. Since there's this sort of global race for AI, there's an asymmetric progression in the development of AI in some ways, because some countries, and we talked briefly about China, some countries are more open to using data in an active way to develop systems. So how do we think of this idea of asymmetric development, and do we need to think of this is it even possible, let's say, to think of this at a global level? Do we need a sort of, and you forgive the comparison, but do we need a sort of United Nations of artificial intelligence ethics and framework, or do we just say every country, do your best, and we hope that humanity is a self-regulating sort of throttle on not running away? How do we think about this imbalance?
Steve, you're getting tough.
Well, this is, we want to talk about these things here, so how do we think about this?
Let's look at it. The first question, whether we need a UN Council for AI ethics. Well, if you look at the national strategies of AI, like 25 today, I think, available in the world, that like specifically, explicitly stated, country-wise, including your named country, you like it or not, you believe it or not, but ethics is actually part of it. So all of these nations, how much they believe in that and how much they they are, deeply thinking about it, that's another question. But at least they believe that in order to scale, adopt AI in the society for the benefit of human beings, we should never forget, AI is an enabling technology, potentially augmenting human capabilities. And if you look at those documents, you would find that all nations have, I would say, pretty much similar fundamental principles. Everyone talks about transparency. Everyone talks about explainability. Everyone talks about accountability and responsibility, having humans in the loop. Everyone talks about fairness, algorithmic fairness, fairness based on data, So it sets the standard. If it's global, if we need that type of setup, I don't know. I don't know. If it doesn't help us, we probably shouldn't. I'm coming from a business, so I'm like very pragmatic. But at the same time, fundamental values for augmenting human capabilities with AI are pretty much the same. Actually, we shared a very interesting discussion today with IMDA and Singapore AI. What we see we're doing in Telenor and what we see we're having a debate in Europe and here on the principle level, on the value level, what are ethical principles? Same. When it comes to implementing them, governing, setting up governance frameworks, there is variation. There should be variation, I believe. So I don't know if I answered your tough question, but
So how do we think about bias? How do we think, I'm sure you get that question all the time, and I'm going to go to the group next. So next question is yours as a group. But how do we think about bias? Because no conversation about developing AI for the benefit of humanity can be complete without tackling this question of unintentional bias, or maybe even intentional bias, creeping into the algorithms and taking the worst of sort of humanity into AI. How do we think about this issue of bias, and is there a way to make systems that are better than us in terms of being neutral?
See, let me give you an example, and then we can discuss with the audience how do they think about it. And actually, this example was given by my colleague today in Telenor. And the example is about, automated pill, the tablets, the pill systems going into the hospitals or healthcare centers and giving out pills to the patients. And this is fully automated, right? You're running out, the robot is running and giving you pills at the right time, at the right date, the right pill. Now I asked my colleagues, but is it okay? Have you thought, oh yeah, people trust it's not by Telenor, it's not developed by us, but it's like one of the, startups that are developing this. And I said, what, is it okay? Yeah, why not? You have to trust the technology. Yeah, but right, who's behind it? Well, the programmers, yeah, and do we trust them? Oh yeah. Or then the question mark, right? And then we started discussion, a great discussion, and then the same questions can appear in the emergency situations when there's actually research done, just read yesterday, and there was actually an experiment done with emergency situations when there is a fire. And then there were sort of robots used showing people the way out, completely the other way around. And you know what? 80% followed. They tried to understand why, because there was a sign, and the answer, we have to trust the machine. The machine is more robust, because they're people, they shouldn't even think about doing harm. So sometimes there are might be intentional potential harm. Sometimes may not be intentional. When I go to my developers or engineers and ask about AI, AI systems tend to break. This is like with every technology. And the humans might not even think about it. We trust the technology because it is the technology, it's not a human. So why I'm giving those examples, it's just sometimes we not necessarily think that some kind of bad things may happen, and we tend to overtrust the technology. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I'm saying that this seems to be could be, right? It is, actually, it's proven by experiments. So then this question about bias comes, right? Today, I mean, majority of robust, top-notch AI systems, I'm talking scale in the world, are designed by whom? Skewed population. And there is a question of how much we could and should trust them or this skewed population of actually scaling. And that is the reason why I think we need to invest in talents, we need to invest in building awareness in the population so that we're not having this apocalyptic view on AI taking over our media channels and everything. So that is why I'm really happy you have these people here who are helping all of us, right, to break that bias discussion. I mean, at least to start talking about it.
Keep talking. And that's partly back to the point that you touched on a moment ago about explainable AI, transparent AI. The more we understand the path to a decision, ideally it's less easy to hide or ignore a bias. But it's back to the example, I don't know how many of you have had the same example as me. When I'm driving along and there may be a place that I know somewhat well but not perfectly well, and I've got Google Maps on and it's saying turn right, and I think, I don't think that's the right thing to do, but it says Google Maps says turn right, so I turn right, and then half an hour later I end up at the place that I knew I should have gone to if I'd just turned left, and it would have been a much different path. But I, quote, trust that Google Maps knows something that I don't, and now a lot of times if it's saying turn right, I just barrel on. So I think there's this idea of bringing yourself into the discussion and not implicitly or blindly trusting. Okay, what questions does anybody have on their mind for Ieva? Yes, please. I'm just going to do, I guess we have a mic.
Since we're talking, so my name is Pratik. I work with the Swiss government. I'm here on a little holiday sabbatical. I work in India. My question to you is about, because we're talking about must-win battles, right? Have you seen examples of biomimicry being applied in artificial intelligence?
Once again, what? I didn't hear.
Biomimicry, bio-inspired models? That's the question.
Yes, and that's the bio-inspired models that we develop in the big Cyborg project at NTNU in Norway. Definitely see. It's a big European Horizon 2020 program that actually in several of the countries are developed, and we are very proud to have this project in Norway. So I can give you more details on that. We're doing a great job there.
It's funny because now when we say things like 2020, it doesn't sound very far away.
No,
it's
not
about
at
a
all.
year and a half away, but
Not at all. My answer is yes, and let's have a chat after this.
okay, so adversarial network, Ieva will talk. Yes, please. Okay.
Very, very good question. Thanks for the question. I think, one of the reasons why, several reasons, but one of the things that by the way, it's my personal opinion now, because this is very we have many different opinions. My opinion is why it is so hyped and high, and we're afraid, it's because of lack of knowledge and understanding what AI can do. A lot of discussion at the top political level also is happening about the threats, the danger of AI coming over and taking over the human race, and these really science fiction type of ideas. But if you look at research frontiers today, what AI can actually do, it is by far away from this general or super intelligence. AIs cannot reason today. Computers, well, they can learn increasingly with the more quality data. Then there's no planning capabilities. And there's always human in the loop. So, my answer to that is lack of awareness and knowledge, and it's technical. It's very technical, down to such a level of detail that it's very difficult for the society and decision makers to understand. And the second reason, when you start thinking about all industrial revolutions historically, there was always no willingness to accept, because you change the level people are used to behave. So in that negative sense, there's always, that's how the disruptions happen. When the disruptions become kind of mature, that is when the general adoption level has been set. But the first disruptions are always perceived negatively. So and when those disruptions, as their comment was, talk about human intelligence, taking something with humans' ability to, regulate our lives, then the danger level becomes even higher. So to summarize, lack of knowledge, in my opinion, is lack of knowledge at the very technical level, what AI can do. A lot of media attention, superficial discussion about AI, reaching various levels. And third, it's a natural, you throw away the first disruptions usually. You don't like them because you're not used to that, and because you're going to lose a lot. There will be a lot of businesses, leaving, and completely disrupted. We know it. So, no one wants to go there.
Let me also just offer a perspective, since I have the microphone. One is that if you think about all of the tech, and I totally agree, that if you look back at all the obvious things, like getting into a lift or an elevator, made people very anxious when the person that was in it engaged and disengaged the gears, and then somebody said, well, let's do it in an automated way, and people said, count me out. But I think the bigger leap right now is that this feels like the first time in human history in which we're not looking at these as supplemental technologies, like the lift or the automobile, and people may have been anxious, but they were still supplemental. This is about complete replacement. There's a level of anxiety that, especially if you talk about artificial general intelligence, the idea that we are somehow now not in charge or not relevant. So if you think about Isaac Asimov, or you think about movies like I, Robot, and people are always worried about this idea of how are decisions made, right? And that famous scene in I, Robot in which there's a problem and the robot says, I'm going to pick you because you're the better odds. And people use that case all the time, like with an autonomous vehicle. There's this person on the left and this person on the right. Which one does the autonomous vehicle run over? And the answer is, why do we think that we're any better at making those choices than something else, would be my counter argument. How do we make those decisions? So before I spend any other time on my own views and theories, I think that these ought to be positioned as things that are helpful and make incremental progress. This idea of a vertical leap, I think, is especially scary.
I want to add one more thing, Steve. Absolutely agree. The other reason is readiness. if we believe that automation, robotization, and AI will be scalable, think of the Asian continent. Think of blue-collar workers, percentage of population working in potentially automated jobs. And if some of the countries in this region are so much advanced in terms of investment levels, in terms of access to data, in terms of talent, and they're able to automate and be competitive globally in those traditional industries where 50% of the population work at, man, this is huge social, economic implications for the countries. We talk country, 50% of the population, take any country in Asia, outside, in your neighborhood. I mean, it's a lot.
Let me keep going because I saw another hand. Was there another question, please? Yes, please.
So the question is, how does that work? Yeah, absolutely. A very good question. As we speak, there's actually a draft on my table on who's liable, accountable for both good and bad decisions. And there is what the discussion is about, shared accountability. Now, it's still complex. I mean, we should never blame a machine. It's without brains. But there's someone behind the machine all the time. And then there's a question, is it a designer of an algorithm? Is it a deployer, a company or a software engineer? Is it a user and consumer? I mean, or a user of these systems, right? B2B, B2C, B2B2C markets, you know, and they're like, or is it a government? Just take that sort of responsibility and there's no clear-cut answer to that. But what is clear, there will never be a machine responsible, at least in the EU, and I see the Singapore takes the same approach, human-centric AI or human in the loop. I mean, there will always be a responsibility for someone who designed, developed, used the system. And who wants to take that responsibility, at which level? There will be defined in the frameworks. The current framework that the EU is kind of working on, ethical framework, it's not going to be binding. It's going to be it's not regulatory. It's like a code of kind of similar as Singapore is doing today. So it's like a voluntary call to respect and adhere to sort of widely discussed principles with the society and companies and you know, researchers of what seems to be, you know, what is explainable and what is not. What's the level of detail you need to explain to the consumer? Another question. So it's going to be like that. But I have no concrete answer which one, I mean, which level, I mean, everyone will take. But I mean, people are working on that. And I know that colleagues here in Singapore discuss it widely.
But I think this is a good example of why what might be possible is so difficult to try and implement, because whenever there's a let's try this, the second question is, but what if it goes wrong? And so we lurch. That's where I'll pay respect to China, which is, let's see what happens, right? I mean, the fact that there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hospitals using artificially intelligent systems as part of the diagnostic regime And there's a lot of countries that wouldn't feel comfortable with that. So everybody can have an opinion. I think that this is one way in which the case moves forward. But that's where we get stuck a lot of times on AV. The answer is, what happens if it runs over a peacock on Sentosa? And is it the manufacturer of the mechanics or the software, or somebody wasn't paying attention? If you look at the famous video with the Uber driver that was glancing down, and I don't think a human driver could have reacted in that amount of time, to be honest with you. But okay, again, are there, yes, please.
I wanted to come back on what you said about the GPS in your car. Following, I read a study saying that the brain size of taxi driver has reduced since they use GPS. And so my question is one of the downside of technology making us dumber? First question. And second is, how do we safeguard our cognitive capacities, if that's the case?
So let me, if I may, paraphrase for those that didn't hear, and I may edit certain sections, but the basic, I think the basic theme is atrophy if you don't use something. So if you sit in a chair all day long and you don't use your muscle, you atrophy. If you're not using your brain, and the situation may be easily understood that, certainly my youngest girl's age, the kids don't think about writing a long-form letter, right? When we show up at the parents' night, the answer is they submit everything based on the laptop, they submit it to a share file. So if we say, you know, could you write a thank you letter with a pen? It's like, what? So atrophying, and so how do we think about, as we come to rely more on technology and maybe artificially intelligent systems, do we atrophy at an even higher level? Meaning it's not just the leg muscle, it's the brain. How do we think about this issue?
I think let's get real, actually. Look, I like actually a phrase by Andrew Ng, one of the top researchers in machine learning. And he said, if it takes a bit less than 5 seconds or 10 seconds, I'm not sure he used, to do a task for a human, machine can do it. And what Jack Ma says, you like it or not, it will come. So complex tasks will always be performed in human-machine interaction. And complex tasks, I mean, when you need creativity, when you need complex decision-making, when you need empathy, when you need, I mean, human abilities. Machines, you know, I don't believe they will be able to sense with the heart. That's like, we go science fiction here, right? But those tasks, we gave an example of a taxi driver, right? Some of these tasks are, I mean, you pretty can automate, right? When it gets complex, I mean, the car driving is pretty automated thing, you know? Machines can completely take it. The question is, do we want, or as a society or consumers, are willingly adopting that? Are we afraid of some complex situations when machines cannot take it alone? All of these examples, we're saying like, it's complex situations. When you have several incidents coming at the same time, and the machines is not like repetitive tasks. So repetitive, routine tasks will be automated. That is the future. But what we should never forget, and we should start investing, and I'm so glad that there are countries, companies, individuals, really visionary, knowing that we should invest into human augmenting capabilities. I mean, taxi drivers may have even more interesting time sitting in taxi, do something very productive, you know? Adding on to the GDP of a country. You know, just an example, right? We as humans, I always give the same argument. I mean, like, yeah, things that we do repetitively might be automated, but that gives us free time and capacity to do something more intelligent, something we had never had time to, right? And this is the power of AI that I believe that we need continuously invest even more in human capacity. Think of, I always give example of leaderships, you know, what type of leadership we will have. Or org design. Look at the standard, the biggest companies of the world. How are they organized? How are they structured? Hierarchies will probably disappear sooner or later. Because, you know, machines can, you know, for automated tasks, you need hierarchy. For non-automated tasks, hierarchy doesn't work. So, and again, let's think about where can we invest to augment human capabilities. And then surely, I mean, there's a national strategies underneath for automating and creating competitive advantage in the world. So my question to Singapore, what are you guys thinking? How should Singapore create and participate in the race for AI most successfully? What is your strategy? How are you going to compete? Any insights? I don't know. I mean, this is the question.
From a Singapore point of view is this. As long as money flow and deal flow don't go through the private sector, I don't see anything's going to happen. So ultimately, it is all about money. How much money can go to every individual down here. How fast they can activate that money and innovate. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. Again, come back to EU. Good, they are actually putting money into an area. But China is doing what? Fantastic amounts.
Yeah. I mean, Ieva and I were talking before we came up, and we said, look, at the end of the day, there's a perfect, to use the expression, a perfect storm in China, because unlimited resource for people, for data, for investment, a hugely supportive government that wants the leadership in this space and is willing to really push and deploy, and then you intersect that with robotics and embedded systems, boy, that's a really high-powered scenario. I'm going to stay on the theme for a second. I'm going to come back to Ieva, but is there one more before I come back to my own little list? Yes, please.
Test. Oh, yeah. Okay. So I guess this is similar because it also goes towards the topic of regulation. Like I think it's very similar to like the whole genetics discussion. How much should we regulate it? We are at a very similar point, and I think like companies will always in the end go to the country where they can do what they want to do. So in terms of must-win battles, I guess the win is for the country, I would think. But anyways, like the question in particular is, so if a country has much less regulation, what is the EU expert group going to do? Like, is it going to lower the regulation piecewise, or, yeah?
So your question is, to some extent, this point that I was raising earlier about being asymmetric, that if Europe is saying, here's our baseline of data protection and our levels of ethics, and other countries are doing something different, and the talent flows to those other countries. It's like a tax rate. If you say the tax rate is 15%, you get a lot of capital, and somebody else says, well, I'll do 12, and then, you know, theoretically everybody rushes over there. But you talked about the importance, basically the core cultural importance, at least in Norway, of ethics and privacy, which sounds like it would essentially say, well, that's just a price we're willing to pay, meaning, okay, if the talent goes there, but we stay true. But how do you think of this?
Well, the point of saying that it should be more ethical or less ethical, we never discuss this. This is not the point of this. It's not the angle to discuss. Why? Because European countries, I would say most of them at least that are represented in the high-level expert group, and by the way, there are parallel processes at the government level. They all understand that for any AI system, to work, you need people to adopt it. You need people to believe in it. You need people to trust in it. You need people to take it. I mean, no one wants to have bad cases. So the discussion is on a different level. The discussion is how can we make AI responsible, sustainable, so that people adopt it. That's not a discussion if we get like some less or more regulation. I think that's the wrong discussion in itself. I mean, to have that type of discussion, at least I haven't heard about it. And this is not about regulation per se, but it's about building awareness about some ethical issues. It's a gray zone. I mean, there are ethical issues, moral issues, legal issues. In EU, what we discuss, what are those issues and what implications does it have to legal framework that are currently adopted in the EU? No one discusses less or more ethical norms here. Because at the end of the day, what Europe believes, and we in Telenor believe, by the way, too, that responsible innovation is the way forward. Sustainable innovation that empowers societies, this is the way forward. It's a long-term game. It's not a short-term, market. Because look at the examples of Cambridge Analytica. I mean, we can get so many examples where, the reputational loss for misuse of data is huge. I mean, there are a lot of discussions how that will continue, but it's just an example that some of the non-necessarily well-cured and are long-term views into how you use your data, your customer data, may have big consequences for companies. So I don't think that companies or even countries want to risk that. So it's a big risk, and I know we don't discussing that.
Good. So let's jump in. We'll keep building on it.
That's actually what I wanted to say. It's the problem I have with this approach is that ethics, usually the ethical issues happen way after the technology is in place, because you have no idea before how you're going to use that technology. Let's take the example of the internet, for instance. The internet were built for the military in the first place. They had no idea that it could spread and be used everywhere like it is today, and that it will lead to all those issues that you have. So focusing on ethical questions today, I see a problem with this.
So it's sort of like our Swiss friend that was saying, hey, technology is neither good nor bad, it's the use of it, right? You can say anything about anything, which is it's neither good nor bad on its own, but how it's used can be altered or made worse. Genome sequencing could be, like you were saying. Yes, please.
I think what Dr. Ieva said, the word risk, you finally heard the word risk. I think before we even talk about ethical issues, right, the reason why we rational beings have a concern about AI is because the systems that are built, right, I mean, if you talk about industrial engineers, any engineer, right, who looks at the systems or systems that are in place in use in the public, if you do a risk analysis, right, there will come a point where you realize that based on what AI can achieve at this moment, right, it's very hard to secure or to be very sure that everything will work all at the same time, and the risk of failure and the consequence of failure is so high that maybe you cannot adopt it the way it's being, or the way you wish you could adopt it theoretically.
But isn't that the journey of all technology? But please, I defer to you.
We cannot afford to have like a system that is 99.9% accuracy for certain things, right? You cannot assume it's like 95%. For a building, it can be 95%, but for certain critical systems, health system, it cannot be 95%.
Sure. The consequences are different. Understand.
So analysis by all the various people, I think I seem to trust the people who make a safe decision.
Please.
Because you cannot play with human lives.
No, understood. Do you want to say anything on it, or should I? You say you agree, or?
Well, there is definitely it's a discussion point. I mean, I believe that personally that an ethical discussion in the society has to happen. I mean, just the fact of having that debate, it's important. I mean, a question if it leads to regulation, that's a whole different discussion. I mean, it's not happening over time, usually, that I know. And it involves societal organizations, I mean, usually in democratic countries. So, I mean, I personally agree, and I'm very happy that this debate is happening. Where that debate is going to lead us differently in different countries, that's a different level of debate. And I don't think that we're definitely not companies alone who are going to decide that, and not startup companies alone who are going to decide it. But being us involved in that debate is crucially important. I mean, security, safety, I mean, it goes under ethics too. I mean, how secure the technology, how robust they are, who's going to be taking accountability and responsibility for that, who's going to take care of privacy and data breach, how's going to explain it, to which level of detail. I mean, this is all important.
So let me come back to what I hope is a light question here, and then we're going to have to go more to the networking time so we have time together. Norway has a technically or technologically savvy population. When we think about the future of people being aware and being involved, can you just share with us a little bit your perspective on the role of education? I mean, some people say everybody should know Python, you know, everybody needs to know this and that. Is it languages, meaning computer languages? Is it critical thinking? Is it the art of debate? How do we want to think about kids growing up in a way that they are competent, informed, engaged as part of this society versus, gee, there's half a dozen really amazing algorithm, you know, writers over in the corner and everybody else just hopes that they're doing the right thing?
You know, Steve, the biggest problem with that question is that we don't know. You should ask your kids, and they don't know. But what we know that it has never been a better investment than in education. I've never seen a better investment. You can see countries like Singapore, countries like Finland, countries like Norway, many other countries, they've been investing in their education for years. I mean, it's not a 5-year-old thinking, it's like a 10, 20-year-old thinking. So my answer to this, unfortunately, we don't know to the level of the detail what we need. But we know that we need to invest in education, and what type of education, right? Everyone talks today, yeah, we need STEM. Science, technology, engineering, math. The world will be dependent on these guys, or generally population that is able. But I think that it's not only. I think that the investment into a cross-disciplinary AI or digital technology, whatever you call it, is essential. We cannot depend on programmers or engineers or data scientists only. We need those people at the general level who are able to work with the machines. I do believe that human-computer interaction will be, to some extent, scalable, in 20 years' time. But those humans will not necessarily be programmers. So, yes, important education, never before. Strategic interest of countries. Never been better investment than that I know, but difficult to know where.
So for those that know Ben Goertzel, if you've had a chance to see Ben at an event here or at some other place, he's going to be at Deep Tech Summit in 2 weeks with us. Ben is the guy behind the AI relationship of Sophia for Hanson Robotics. And Ben's a guy that believes very much in the mind meld of technology and humans, sort of, that we're all going to insert something into our skulls and we'll be this sort of hybrid being in another 10 or 15 years. So if you're interested in understanding more about that, there's going to be some discussions about that coming up. All right, so as to leave time for us to chat, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for being here. Thanks to Ieva for being here, and let's get to know each other a bit more in the break.
Thank you for having me.
Rise till we fall. They think we're just dropouts living at our mom's house. Parents must be so proud, they know it all. No, they don't speak our language. They say we're too savage, yeah. No, no, we don't give up anymore. We're gonna rise till we fall. We're gonna rise till we fall. No, they don't speak our language. They say we're too savage, yeah. No, no, we don't give up anymore. We're gonna rise till we fall.
You're so precious when you smile. Hit it from the back and drive you wild.